looking for a sign on the mind or recycle time. Buried in the memory.
What is Deathloop? Well, Deathloop is a game unlike any other. Kinda. It's a game that you've probably been hearing about for almost a year or two now. It was announced at E3 2019. To put it plainly, Deathloop is a time-looping assassination game. That's the most basic way I can set it up. For reference, think Dishonored, Prey, and Deus Ex all living together, and they have a baby. It takes the powers from Dishonored, the semi-open world from Deus Ex, and the exploration system and feel from Prey, and it mixes it all together. You throw a diaper on that thing, and you got yourself a little baby Deathloop. Before we get into the actual review, here are the specs I played on for the entirety of my playthrough. All the footage you see is recorded on this rig. And here are the stats I finished the game with. I beat the game in about 23 hours with 32 out of 54 achievements unlocked. Lastly, there will be no story spoilers in this review. So first things first, how does it play? Overall, the game plays pretty well in a lot of aspects and struggles in a few. The core gameplay loop, thank you, is to explore, build up your arsenal of weapons, powers, and knowledge to eventually break the loop. Speaking of powers, there are a total of 7 in the game. You got Shift, Aether, Havoc, Nexus, Carnesis, Masquerade, and Reprise. If you have played any of the Dishonored games, you know a lot of these. Shift lets you teleport a short distance, Aether makes you invisible, Nexus links enemies together, Carnesis lets you throw people around like a ragdoll until they throw up. Masquerade and Reprise are special. These two powers are unique to the character you're playing and cannot be removed from your loadout. Reprise is only usable by Colt. Reprise allows you to come back from the dead twice in a current loop. If you die a third time while your charges are depleted, you reset the loop, losing any gear you did not save. You gain charges back by killing Juliana or escaping into your tunnels. Masquerade is only usable by Juliana, and it allows you to take on the appearance of any character in the game you choose to use it on. Do anything combat related and you lose the effect. We'll get into Juliana's gameplay a little later in the multiplayer section. For now, let's focus on Colt. Before you leave the main hub area to explore the zone you chose, you set up your loadout consisting of 3 guns, 2 powers, and 4 personal trinkets. Each weapon can have 3 different trinkets that affect the gun, and each power can have 2 upgrades that make the power have a little extra oomph. The 4 other trinkets you can equip affect your character as a whole, so they give you abilities like double jumping, hacking faster, etc. Overall, there's a lot of customizability for your style of play, whether it's completely stealth or running and gunning, or a mix of both, which is what I did. Colt's gameplay is great. You get to experience a wide variety of power and weapon combinations throughout your playthrough, and you don't get any repercussions for doing so. What I mean by that is, you really can go out there and have fun with the powers and weapons. The only thing that's stopping you is your imagination. Want to blink and kick someone off a cliff? Go for it. Want to kill like 40 enemies at once? Go for it. There really is no hard limit as to what you can do. Just get creative. You really do have a huge kit available to you. It just takes a little bit to get it going. After about 5 to 6 loops, I had a pretty big arsenal and it was constantly growing. However, this leads to a problem later in the game, and that is the fact that you are a god amongst men in this world. Initially, you might start to struggle with enemies taking you out and stuff, but you soon start to realize that the AI in the game is not the best. The enemies themselves don't have much variety, and all the non-boss enemies can be taken out by a single headshot. And I mean all of them. There will be times where I'm sneaking around and someone sees me, so I quickly turn around and just shoot them and move about my day. It's nothing more than a mild inconvenience. If you get spotted and want to go loud instead of stealth, running and gunning is a lot of fun, but again, the enemies are not too challenging to pose a real threat. You can get overwhelmed with the sheer amount of enemies the game throws at you, but you learn to navigate that quickly. Don't get me wrong, I still had a blast sneaking around and running and gunning. It just depends on how you want to play. The bit of jank I experienced was not enough to ruin it for me, but players looking for more of a challenge, this might cause an issue for you. Where there was a bit of a challenge was the multiplayer. Let me show you what I mean. So the multiplayer takes a little bit of a different approach than most games. As you explore the world with Colt, Juliana can either invade you as an AI controlled enemy, which is not very smart, or a player controlled enemy, which can also sometimes not be very smart. Case in point here. Wow, this is a lot further than I thought. There we go. When you play as Juliana, you get access to the same set of powers and weapons as Colt except for Reprise. Instead, you get Masquerade. However, you need to unlock all these powers, weapons, and trinkets. So initially start with none, but the more you play multiplayer, the more you get. Juliana's gameplay is fun. It feels about the same as Colt, but differs in that you get help from the other enemies. You can sick them onto Colt by tagging him, and they can also serve as alarm beacons if he kills them and others see that happen. The general idea is to hunt Colt. He cannot escape into his tunnels so long as your beacon that is set up is still active. If he deactivates it, he can escape into the tunnels and you will quote unquote lose the match. When I first tried it out, I actually found myself struggling a lot with that premise. Colt has 3 lives when you have 1, and your helpers can be easily taken out by the 1 headshot I mentioned earlier, and in general are just not very smart. But after I played a little more of the main game, I found the multiplayer to be more fun. I knew the routes players would be taking because I took those routes to do the same thing that they're doing now. And I also knew how the powers worked so I could keep a lookout for those. And I also knew where the main objectives were so I knew how to guard them and to camp. But unfortunately, this is 1 out of every 8 games or so. For the other 7, I was struggling to do anything due to the immense lag that I experienced whenever I loaded into another player's game. From what I found online, the multiplayer was host-based, so if the host had bad internet connection, the game would stutter and sometimes even disconnect. All in all, not the best experience, but still enjoyable. You get to experience the world from the other side, and it's a really nice experience to see that. Okay, so I loved the world of this game. From the cutscenes to the environments to the characters, it all felt very consistent and on theme. Different areas of the island have their own themes and their own environments, and sometimes that even changes depending on the time of day you go. The streets of Updam in the morning is a crazy different experience versus the afternoon or even nighttime. Exploring was rewarding and provided new routes to solve problems later in the day. Overall, the level design of most of the areas was awesome. Unfortunately, there were just some levels that were a little poopy. Now, I'm not saying every single location has to be an absolute banger, I'm just saying personally I didn't care for some of the locations like Frank's Club. Put it into context, I visited every location numerous times but only went to Frank's Club once. I had no reason to ever go back after the initial visit, and I'm not sure if this was the game's intention, but I can't imagine it was. But that was just a minor thing. Ultimately, the rest of the level design was great. Now, the cutscenes that play when you figure something out pertaining to the loop were a lot of fun. They had a unique style that I had not seen very much in a lot of media. If you've seen Zima Blue of Love, Death, Robots on Netflix, it was kind of like that. I very much enjoyed these cutscenes and I feel like they brought the world a little more to life. The main characters of the game were all very fun. Each one had their own vibe and aesthetic and were weird in their own way, including Colt. They really felt like fleshed out characters that you were interacting with. The banter between Juliana and Colt was hilarious. The constant teasing you get from Juliana is great along with the retorts that you fire back. I find myself laughing at the interactions they had more than I thought I would. The writing for the game in general is really fun and well done between the characters. I actually really like talking to all of them and messing with them. You find out a lot from the world by exploring and reading notes or listening to the audio logs that get left around, so be sure to read those. Oftentimes, Colt will have something to say about these notes, so it's worth trying to find them just to get more unique dialogue. Some of it is really funny and some of it is actually plot crucial. So yeah, go and explore. When the ending of the game came about, I initially really liked it. I think the culmination of everything you learned was great, but story-wise, it felt a little abrupt. It didn't ruin the ending for me or anything, but it did feel a little jarring. But I still felt that the narrative the game was trying to showcase did come through, however abrupt that was. So there you have it, my thoughts on the game for the whole internet to see. Please don't yell at me. I really enjoyed it and I'm definitely going to go back and play some more. When I initially finished the game, I gave it an 8 out of 10. After taking some time to think about it and revisit the game, I want to give it a higher score. I really enjoyed it and would definitely recommend it to anyone who's looking for a medium-length game with tons of variety, but with the caveat that the multiplayer and some of the enemy AI/difficulty scaling was not the best. So I'm giving Deathloop a 9 out of 10. I want to see more of these kinds of games be made with this much emphasis on actually being able to use the tools you've been given without punishing you for doing so. I feel as though the issues that I had with it did affect my overall enjoyment of the game, but they were not enough to make me dislike the game. But overall, I would say Deathloop is an experience I would play on loop.